Hey, Adam here. Solid Smack. Josh is here too.
Josh.
We're gonna stand just off screen.
Sure.
We can stand on screen.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine. So we spoke with Bre actually 3 years ago on Engineer versus Designer back when we were doing that stuff.
That was a good show.
And that was February 2012. So that's exactly 3 years ago.
Man.
And
Doesn't feel like 3 years ago.
a lot
but
of
it-
stuff has happened since
Yeah.
then. So what's happened since since we talked to you 3 years ago?
I remember doing that show in the office at 314 Dean Street, and actually I'm back there. Bold Machines. I moved my innovation lab into the old MakerBot space.
Uh-huh.
So since then, MakerBot's grown a lot, and then we've moved into like proper office space with multiple
building.
bathrooms.
Become a proper, like an actual building.
Yep, and then moved the manufacturing space down to Industry City and got a lot of space where we're building.
Now tell me about
the
Simon lives in New York and was actually really interested in your kind of commitment to Brooklyn. You know, your kind of commitment to be there physically. Is that important to you personally, or do you feel like to the group as a whole there's an identity there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things there. One, like running remote offices is hard. It just requires like being in multiple places at once, and so having everybody together is great. And then having the engineers and the product team right next to the manufacturing means that, you know, I mean, honestly, the product guys and the manufacturing guys should be arguing every day anyway, and having them be able to do that in person means things get resolved faster. And there's a whole amount of like a ton of stuff that just allows us to get things done faster just by proximity of humans. I think when we think about the future, we think about all the technology, but the fact of the matter is, like, stuff still gets done better in
Social networking is great, but
you can't eat a pizza on Twitter together, right?
That's right.
And then you also opened the store too, but that was downtown. So was it?
So we've got 3 stores now, and then, well, actually, we're in 500 retail locations between the Microsoft stores, the Micro Centers, Home Depot, all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of places you can go to and get your filament fix, or see a MakerBot. A lot of times it's about just seeing a MakerBot in person, because for most of the world, it's still science fiction. So you get somebody to see it in person, and they go, oh.
Science fiction's 26, 27 years old now. So this is going to be. I want to get back to that in a minute, actually. But tell me about Bold Machines. You're doing this thing. What is that?
Bold Machines, it's the innovation workshop at Stratasys, and we're basically pioneering the technology and empowering others to use it. So I've got a workshop with all the 3D printers, all of them, and we find people come
all of the printers.
All of the printers. And
all your printers belong to us.
And we basically just help people make cool. Basically, our job is to make cool stuff all day long.
Wow, that's a pretty cool
So it's
job.
a mix of R&D and.
Yeah,
just
like for example, with the new Connex 3, we're basically just figuring out how to use that, and then we'll share that information because it's so new. A lot of people, the design tools are still
That's the multicolor.
But like, how do you do a gradient then? If each
Right.
color if one thing is an assembly and each color is a different component of the assembly, how do you do gradients?
Yeah, you really need a dedicated tool for that. Yeah.
So, well,
The
there's
SolidWorks
things you can
2016.
do.
There we go.
Yeah. So I have a question for you
Big one.
guys.
Bring
Let's
it.
talk about Minecraft.
Okay. Yeah.
What is going to be the impact of Minecraft on the future of 3D modeling?
I love this. Bre Pettis is interviewing Solid Smack about the future.
No, that's a.
You
perfect
guys are in a
question.
position to know this stuff.
That's a very good question. I play it all the time with my kids. It's to see the way their minds wrap around the 3D environment and the stories that come out of it. It's a perfect setup for being able to take an idea and then just immediately go to work on it in a 3D application, or even just like with physical components. I mean, I think it's going to be interchangeable. I think once when they can match the digital, the physical, it's just going to be. We're going to see amazing.
I think
these
they
kids
already
do
expect
amazing
it.
things. They do.
It's amazing. You know, the kid. My daughter's 1 year old, and she walks up to every screen she sees and tries to touch it. You know, she expects to be able to interact with it that
Yep.
way. And I was at the coffee shop just last week, sitting there working on something, and two kids were off school. You know, I think one of them was probably 10 and maybe 10, 12, this kind of age range. And they walked in, and they had their laptops, and they whipped out full laptops on the table, opened them up, pulled out their mouse, and they were sitting across from each other playing Minecraft, building things and talking to each other. And it's a real-time social collaboration between a brother and a sister who are face-to-face, but also digitally at the same time.
Yeah,
I think that's what they expect, that kind of merging.
Well, there's some opponents to it, say it sort of like disconnects the kids from this interaction, this social interaction. I think it looks like that when one kid is just sitting there, just completely absorbed in a game, just like anybody absorbed into any digital interface. But there is the social aspect there where they're communicating. They get online. They can work together on building things. It's definitely
it's like 3D literacy. This is like Dr. Seuss for 3D
I mean,
modeling.
the whole spatial awareness too.
Well,
Yeah.
what I was told, kids, back before Minecraft was even a thing, when people asked what this CAD thing was, I would tell kids, you know, it's a video game that I use to control robots. That's a pretty cool thing,
Yeah.
right? You should think that's cool. And now I think that's not a stretch
No.
for kids. They're like, okay, yeah, it's a video game that I can use to make things. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of an ironic situation here. You started up in the open source arena. Stratasys, some say, was sort of a pushback on that. Now you guys are together.
Stratasys
So
was the
it's-
enemy. Now
yeah.
Stratasys is your friend. And what's
Is it because
you know?
they've come to an acceptance on something, or what's the deal behind it?
Who's changing who here?
I mean, so there was an interesting moment where I shifted the company from a somewhat extreme open source business model that was
Unprecedented.
unprecedented and actually potentially suicidal as a company, right? And then brought it kind of into balance by, it's interesting, like all I did was get a design patent on the Replicator 2, and the world sort of freaked out that we had made this shift in ideology. At the same time, we've been patenting things for a long time because we knew that if we were actually going to be a player in the space, to avoid getting just destroyed in legal battles, we had to be able to have something to work with. So, you know, I think that when you can definitely live being an extremist on each side of that. There's people who are like, yeah, IP, that's the way you make money, and there's people who are like, there should be no money. So you can be an extremist on each side of it, and you can even play both sides of it if you want, however you want in an argument. But I think that growing a company, it's been an interesting adventure seeing where it works. I mean, one of the things that I love is that, you know, some of the coolest uses of a MakerBot are off-brand uses where people are taking Replicator 2X's apart and putting special tool heads on that make like replacement tracheas for people.
Yeah.
So can't really get upset about them voiding their warranty on that. That's totally cool.
Yeah, of course.
And in that way, like the affordability of it means like, okay, go ahead, and if you break it, go buy another one. Fine, for those kind of applications.
By many means.
But I think that there's a whole other thing happening where, you know, in terms of product development, being open works best when either you don't have the skills to do it yourself and you need help and you want to share it with a larger community, that it becomes a collaborative, unowned effort, or it's something where you're doing it for your personal happiness and for the benefit of everyone, and you share it, and then you're comfortable watching things happen. So like on Thingiverse, you see this all day long. You know, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of things uploaded every day, and a good chunk of those are derivatives of other things. And the attribution, because there's attribution, when you make something that I made, I'm kind of, it's flattery rather than
and this is an abstract debate we've been having for a long time, and that, you know, you've written about and everybody's written about. But I mean, I guess I was more interested in the concrete here. You know, Stratasys they invented the FDM, you know, in '89, I think it was. And FDM remained purely a professional thing with $10,000 plus machines until 2007, 8, 9, whenever you guys really started to come on the scene and take that over because their patents were expired. And so all of a sudden, this company that's been actively hindering innovation, arguably, for 25 years, hoping that they would be the only one selling it, that opened up because of you. And now, all of a sudden, you're part of the company. I think a lot of people just think that's a really interesting transition.
I think there's a couple things that the open source community can do that if nobody can be in charge of them, because it's that would be like herding cats.
Herding cats, yeah.
But I think that the sort of challenges that are coming up around standards could be directly, that's a dialogue that should happen across the community of both developers and creators and manufacturers and design tools. Like the sort of standards around both material science and material properties, and then also just like, we're really still using STL?
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
really?
Right.
That's interesting. I also think that the RepRap project still hasn't hit its stride.
Yeah.
I still, and I think about this. I'm like, okay, should I just design the 3D printer that can actually be 3D printed? Because so many of the RepRaps are absolutely not RepRaps. You look at like Prusa's pile of junk, and it's not a RepRap. There are very few 3D printed parts. I want a 3D printed 3D printer. I challenge the RepRap community to actually get the show on the road and actually make something that is mostly 3D printed. And I think that it got really, I think frankly we probably didn't help because we distracted a lot of people by making people think that they could start a 3D printer company and make money.
Right.
And that distracted a lot of people who might otherwise have just done it as a community service in the sort of more open source genre.
Well, we wanted to get in
Sure.
the question. We wanted to ask you about getting women, girls, inspiring our children.
My daughter,
into
his
that.
daughter.
Yep.
How do we get them into
You made a comment in the press conference that it's just hiring more women.
It's not just that. No.
I think there's a lot
No.
more to that.
Yeah.
So
Could you unpack
But I
that
mean,
at
you
all
can
for
kind
one
of
minute?
so we have like, okay, we want to inspire our daughters to be innovators, and then in the sort of as dads or moms or parents, and then in organizations we want to hire more women. How do those two things connect? I'm honestly, I don't know if anybody has an answer to that, but I think it because I think it requires lots of things happening
Lot of
at a
moving
very
parts.
micro level,
I
of
think
personal
it's starting
level.
with what you're doing with your daughter at home.
Yeah.
She is
Yeah.
involved in what you do on
Yeah.
a daily basis. She is learning. So I mean,
I think it's just
That's
about
just-
sharing your
yeah.
passion with your
With your kids,
with
male
your
or
kids.
female.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's where it starts, but I think it also, there's probably some political
lot.
aspects too,
Yeah.
getting, really closing the gap and trying to figure out how to do that in organizations.
Sure. Well, Bre, thanks so
All
much
right.
for your time. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
definitely.